Now we're just going to talk through a few additional considerations that will help you support your clients in following through on these behavioral goals and being successful in their accomplishments. One thing you might want to do, especially when the client is first getting ready to really push herself on some new behavior changes or new behavioral goals, is just talk her through how she will engage in her inner monologue at times when she struggles or even doesn't achieve her goals. Remind your client not to be too hard on herself, to instead learn from the ups and downs of the process and understand that change is hard, and it doesn't mean that she's a failure if she doesn't achieve all of her goals right off the bat. Certainly, this will be a minimized concern if you set a goal that is realistic, as we discussed, but at the same time, we know that curveballs come up, life gets in the way, and sometimes even a realistic goal won't be achieved. So help your clients to think first about how to mentally respond if ever they don't achieve their goal. Here are some examples. This is what I learned from this experience. Perhaps they'll identify, this situation is challenging for me. In the future, if this scenario comes up, this is how I'm going to handle it. In general, giving themselves permission to stumble at times, but recognize that they are in this for the big picture, long-term behavior changes. They will be more likely to focus on the positive and stay optimistic even when things go a little bit wrong. Something else that can be really helpful for clients in achieving their goals is to determine a specific strategy for tracking their progress. Now, the image here is more geared toward youth clients. Remember, I worked with a lot of youth as a public health dietitian myself, and I love working with kids. But I will say that adults like something visual too, or many of them do. You might not use quite this kind of chart. It could be something simple they create themselves. Some clients like apps or just tracking things in a journal or on their phone. But one way or another, having some kind of visual cue that helps your clients to see their progress toward healthy behavior changes can often help push them to continue on with that behavior. Another example I didn't mention, but it's indicated on the list, an empty fruit bowl. Perhaps your client decides, I'm going to eat 5 pieces of fruit this week, and puts fruit in the fruit bowl. When the bowl is empty, that's a visual tracker for them. I achieved my goal. I got there. So you can think creatively about this, but consider ways to help your client get that automatic visual recognition of their progress toward achieving their goals. Another tip is to ask your client during the session to verbalize the goal that you've set. Have them say it out loud. It enhances their ownership over the goal, and it also gives you a chance to catch something if the client perhaps forgot a piece of the goal, or if the two of you are not quite on the same page. The next step would ideally be to have the client write down the goal. If for some reason that doesn't seem appropriate in your setting, of course you could write it down for the client, but either way, you want the client to have that goal written out clearly, specifically, and in some kind of format that they can take the goal or goals with them. And that could be on a piece of paper, it could be on a special form, it could be something they just jot down in their phone. But one way or another, that is an opportunity for them to look back on that, make sure they remember all the details. You can support your client by expressing your optimism for their success And if you do that as they're writing down the goal or after they've written down the goal, they can associate that when they look back at the goal, that boost of self-efficacy that they might feel based on your optimism. But one way or another, have them leave with that goal written out. I recognize that this final image kind of focuses on the negative, which is not something we would typically want to do. But I think it is a good reminder of some of the common pitfalls that our clients might encounter or that we might encounter. So again, try to avoid allowing your clients to aim for setting goals that are too big or setting too many at once. Make sure they start at a realistic place. Help them to avoid setting goals that are not specific and it's too hard to know whether or not they've met those goals or not. And finally, avoid letting them leave the session without written goals. Encourage them to verbalize and then write out the goals so that they can go back, reflect on those, and follow through, and ultimately start making progress toward healthful behavior changes.